Hey, Book Dragons. It is your girl, Lindsay. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Spine Bookcast Chronicles of a Bookshop. Today, I have one of my favorite people, Samantha Belle. I met her in Arizona in April, and we've become pretty good friends. And she's an actress and an amazing speech giver. I loved her speech in Arizona. It was fantastic. So, Samantha, how are you doing today?
I'm fabulous. Thanks for having me, Lindsay.
I'm so glad that you took the time to come on today. So
I'm
let's
pumped.
get into it. How did you get into reading books?
Oh man, how did I get into reading books? I've been reading books since before I can remember. My mom's a big reader, and she likes to tell people that I was reading Charlotte's Web before kindergarten. And so I don't remember it necessarily, but apparently I've been reading forever. But I do remember in elementary school and things that reading Harry Potter, and she would read. My parents would always read to me as a kid, but then I don't remember the first time I read. I've always really enjoyed the fiction, fun, phantasmic. I remember our teacher would read Junie B. Jones in class, and I was like, oh, get to the next part. And so when I could read myself, it's like I didn't have to stop, which was the best.
Yeah, my kid read Junie B. Jones, and then so Harry Potter hit when I was in college. And one of the best dates I ever had was this guy and I were going out, and we decided to go to the midnight party for one of the Harry Potter books, pick up our books, and then go home and read them together. And we would take turns reading chapters. And I think we finished at like 7 o'clock in the morning. And it was like, okay, now we're going to go to sleep. But I love that books are just that universal thing.
Yeah, I feel like people that say they don't like to read just haven't found the right book, or they had a lot of pressure around their speed, or, something else that has kind of turned them off to it, because there's just I just don't understand how you could not like reading.
Well, I have a theory about that, actually, and I say this all the time. I think that a lot of school systems treat reading as if it's a chore, and that's how it's presented to kids. You have to read this book, and then we have to take this test, and blah, 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 instead of let's go on this amazing adventure together about this pig and this spider who become best friends, or this kid who has, not a great home life, but finds out he's a wizard and he has all these magical adventures. No, you have to read this book, and then we have to take this chapter test on it, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, that's not how reading should be presented at all to kids, like at all.
Totally. There's a tie with that and running. So I'm not a huge runner, but I used to be as a kid, and I met a super marathoner. So he does 100+ miles on a plane once, and we were talking about it, and he said, yeah, the dislike for running is taught. He said, have you ever seen a child not run everywhere they go? He's like, kids are always running. And he's like, once judgment, shame, like once they're not fast enough, like once it starts being a competition, or especially if they're in athletics, when you do something wrong, you have to run for punishment. He goes, that's when people start to like, they start to link that this isn't for fun, and this isn't just something that I get to do no matter how I do it, no matter how fast I read or how fast I run. It starts to be this thing that's measured, and if you don't measure up, then you don't want to do it. And I just thought it was super, super interesting. And after talking with him, I've actually started running a little bit more, being like, I
love that. Yeah, I played tennis and I ran track. I was a sprinter. And so sprinting was fun. I had a blast. Start, run really quick, finish, done. But then my tennis coach, because I would hit like this as opposed to this, where my hand would be up, every time the ball went flying over the fence, I'd have to go run a lap. And I hated it. I was just like, no. So I definitely think that certain things in school, you start out really liking them, and then somebody makes it a thing. and then you don't enjoy it anymore. And I hate that with reading, because I will have a reading list that I'm never going to finish, ever.
Yeah, it's amazing. They look at the Beauty and the Beast library when she's so excited when they come up, and it's like,
Ah,
oh, yes, I would love. I was such a big
yep.
only physical book person. I would not do
Mhm.
any digital books until like 2016 was the first time that I did it, and I started audiobooks during traffic because I lived in a
Sure.
very like heavy trafficked place, and so I started doing audiobooks, but I had the physical one from the library, and then I would audio the same book. So I would read it twice as fast because I would be reading it physically, and then I would pick up where I left off and listen to it in the car, and then pick back up reading. And so that ended up
Huh.
being working out for me, and that got me into, because there's the Libby library app, and so that started
Yep.
getting me into that. Where now what I tell myself is I test it out with the library, and if I love it, then I can buy it.
Yeah, right. I have like 15 different library cards from all different kinds of states, because I don't like waiting. And so if my library doesn't have it, let me check my other free library cards that are on my Kindle or my Audible. And then when I opened up my bookstore, we didn't have a way for me to give audiobooks to my customers. And then Libra.fm were just like, no, 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 no. You sign up with us, and if your customers get audiobooks through your link, then our store gets a passive income from it. So we get a purchase of each sale. So that's been really interesting, because I now have a Kindle. I listen to Audible books on my Libra.fm app, and I read books. So I've tripled the amount of books that I read, because there are some that I just want to listen. I don't want to buy it. Just let me
Right.
listen to it.
I find that too, like Dr. Joe Dispenza. While yes, absolutely being an actor and a motivational speaker, thank you for that little intro.
Oh,
I also specialize
yes.
in the subconscious mind and energy work, and so Mr.
Mhm.
Dispenza is really great because he's a scientist that's also in the spiritual realm, and so he really links biologically what's happening neurologically with all of these concepts within the spiritual realm, and so his books are very different than Harry Potter
Sure.
and the things that I read. And so for those ones, being able to listen to them on audiobooks helps my retention and helps me be able to just take it as a conversation almost, right? With someone that's just telling me about it,
Sure.
and I can retain it so much better than like reading a textbook.
Oh, absolutely. So I was actually talking about stuff like that on our last episode with Pastor Simmons. And we were talking about religion and philosophy. And we were talking about, because I like to listen to Alan Watts. That my brother got me into Alan Watts. He was an American philosopher, and he talks a lot about the mind and the spirit, and getting them connected together, and how it will absolutely change your life, and just the decisions that you make and how they play into your spirituality. And I really think that sometimes you can read something or hear something, and it changes you on a DNA level, that you just like, you read it and you just have to sit there for a second, kind of have that, oh my God. And I wish
Totally.
every single person could read something and have that hit them like that. Cause it's just, that's what got me into reading, is reading stuff and just, what?
Yeah, and having the movie play in my head when I
Mm,
read, and like seeing it happen, and just being able to be creative without having to create myself. So I feel like, because the kind of books that I enjoy reading are the fantasy fiction, especially young adult, because they're just so easy, and like I already have a real life going on, and so I don't watch dramatic TV either, just because I am a little too energetically connected to things to like have to be so intentional about not getting worked up at Game of Thrones. It's like I just don't watch it. And
I
so
love that
that's the
show
same thing that
so much.
so many people do, and that's great. It was a little much for me. Uh,
Sure.
and so with books, being able to do the same thing, it allows me to feel creative without having to actually create when I'm in these little worlds.
I think it's funny that you say that because about the getting too invested in movies and stuff because like I will watch a movie and I will be personally involved and it just, oh my God, why are you making that decision? Same thing with books where I just have this gut clenching emotional reaction to stop doing that when I'm reading. And I love that, like, you're like me in that you really get into whatever you're reading or watching and that you're just like, oh, and I think that, and what you said too about playing the book in your head like a movie, I do that too. But there are people that don't read like that. And I just found that out. And it's just, how do you read? Like, how do
I
you picture
also
the
heard
characters?
that. Yeah, it's so interesting. There's also people that don't have inner dialogue, which is
That would
also
freak
very,
me out. Like, do you just have silence up there? I constantly have a running dialogue in my head. I wouldn't know
me
what to
too.
do
And
if
I thought everyone did.
it would just freak me out.
Yeah, I thought everyone had the running dialogue, but that is not true. And it's been super interesting to learn and
Mhm.
then talk to people because now I ask. I'm like, well,
No,
once
no, no, me too.
I'm friends, and I'm like, hey, so just curious, like, do you have inner dialogue? And I'm like, ooh, tell me about that.
Yeah, what is that like? Is there a movie? Because I'm going to ask you this because you're an actress, which I have to say I've gone in and watched some of your movies, and I love it. It's fantastic that I can sit there and be like, oh, I know her. I'm friends with her. Um, is there a book out right now, or just a book that you've ever read that you thought, man, if I were going to be in a movie made of this book, this is the book that I would want to do?
So there's been movies that have led me to read the books, like,
Mhm.
and that I discovered them from the movie. I'm thinking about if there's a book series that I have read recently. A lot of things I've been reading recently have just been personal development things. It's actually a goal of mine to get back into just for fun. I mean, personal
Sure.
development is fun, but I mean back into my kind of fictional
Yeah, yeah,
space.
yeah.
There were there were ones, oh my gosh, what were they called? And they were like the fairy tale princesses, but they were slightly different. Um,
Mhm.
Cinder, I think, is one of the first ones, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's
That's
a
the automatron steampunk kind of thing.
it was
Um,
kind of, yes, it was kind of steampunky, and Cinder was one of the books, and of course it's the Cinderella story, but she's like a robot.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anyway, I think one of the, if any of those books ended up being movies or TV show, that would be really cool. I actually have a TV show in my head, only one, but I've got one that I just need to get up and out. That would be a remake, shifting style of a Disney concept as well.
Okay. So I got into a reading slump during COVID because I was so sick of sitting in my house and looking at my four walls because I had gotten laid off and I was just like, okay, I'm gonna shelter at home and oh my God. And I didn't want to read, I didn't want to watch TV, I just wanted to get out of the house. And then a friend of mine sent me The Court of Thorns and Roses, the very first book, which absolutely I read it in like 3 days and then immediately ordered the entire rest of the series. And I'm like, no, 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 slump is over. I need to know what happens. And there's this whole community, and they keep doing a rumor that they're going to do a TV show or a movie. And part of me is like, that would be awesome. But also, if you miscast Resand, you will have an entire group of people that will never forgive you, ever, like for the rest of your
That's
life.
very popular on the gram. That one. The other I just thought about is the Maximum Ride series. Like,
Yes. That
I
would be
would
really interesting.
I
I
would be
would love
Max
to
so
do
hard.
that one. Well, and so we have one writer, Dan Adam, that I talk about. Dan and Lloyd are two writers that have basically become my family, and I just adore them. And Dan's book series, Leaving Earth, is the first one. Well, it's Leaving Home. The first one is Leaving Earth. Then there's oh gosh, I can't remember the titles, and he's going to kill me, and I'm never going to hear the end of it. But he has written 3 books, and I swear, have you ever seen The Martian or read the book?
I've not.
Okay. So it is simultaneously hilarious and really, really like, oh my God, and I keep telling Dan, dude, you have got to put these in a movie because they would make such a good movie. And I keep telling people that's one of the things that I love about independently published authors is they have stories that you would never think, every time I see a remake, I'm just like, but you have all these other books that are so good that would make really good books and movies. And yeah, so the series, it's by Dan Adam, and it's Leaving Earth, New Home, and The Rift. And I was thinking the other day about you when I was thinking about this podcast. I was like, Samantha would be good in that movie. I have you cast as a character in my head in that movie, in that TV show. And like they have all these books now that are making movies out of, and I'm so happy to see that because a lot of them are really fantasy based, and that's really something I've gotten into as well, like you have. Is there a TV or a book series that hasn't been made into a movie that you'd really like to see made into a movie that you've read?
Yeah, I think right, like the Cinder ones, the Maximum Rides, but then I'm like looking at my bookshelf. I've got another bookshelf.
Yeah, no, I do that
too. So books that I would want to see. I think that a genre, and this is, I think, a controversial thing, but a genre that would be fun, that is not a thing, would be to kind of multiverse, like cross books. You know what I mean? Like do a, and not these necessarily too specifically, but like do a Lord of the Rings with where Harry Potter, it's the same world, and like intermingle things. And again, not necessarily those two, but like intermingle things and intermingle universes to create a new, because then you can have all kinds of writing ability. Because I know that that's a hard thing, especially right with Game of Thrones. They caught up to him with the film, and then they were like, well, we have to start kind of making our own thing. And so I think it's a way to bring the fandoms together while still having a third thing, kind of like what they've done with the DC, with the superheroes. They'll do crossover episodes. I think that would be super interesting to do with different fandom book wise.
Oh, and I love that kind of stuff. I just think that's really interesting because you have, I think you're right. It opens it up for new stories that haven't been told yet. And I love, see, now all I'm thinking about is Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. That would be really
like how are Sauron and Voldemort connected? You know what I mean? Like because they'd have to be a tie there, but do they just meet because they're bad guys? But like there's this whole, all of a sudden, there's just so much more possibility without it having to be, that's not how the book is. It's like, because we've entered a space that there isn't lore on. Yeah. And so
see,
there's room to start filling.
That's not what happens in the book, because I am, and it's an infuriating thing, but I tend to be a purist sometimes, that if you're going to do the book, do the book. Stop changing things in the book. And I going back to what we said earlier, I fall in love with certain series, and it's like they sit on my pristine shelf upstairs in my office. That is the holy grail of a series. And then, they're going to do a movie. No, because you're not going to do it right, But if you were going to do it the way you're talking about, that would actually be really cool. And I could be kind of into that.
Because as long as the characters are true to what they would do as their characters, they can then do whatever,
Yeah.
Like Wicked, the movie coming out, based off of the musical, because the book and the musical are very different, but the movie based off the musical, I'm also coming in like, you better have just do the musical with
Yes.
special effects.
Because I went to go see that with my daughter, and it wasn't on my radar that I wanted to go see it. But then we got free tickets from my sister-in-law and my mother-in-law, and I was like, cool, okay, we'll go. My daughter and I will have a mommy-daughter trip. We'll go see Wicked. And I remember being absolutely floored at how good it was and thinking, am I stupid? Why did I not want to go see this? This is amazing. As someone who was a theater person in college. And now when I see they're doing the movie, it's, please just do the musical. Please don't try to make it all special effecty and CG. Just do the musical, So I'm right there with you. I'm going to go watch it with very nervous, like, please God.
I know the trailer looks good. The trailer looks.
Oh, yeah.
So I've got hopes, but I feel like with a cross pollination, if you will, there's less likely to upset one of the genres or one of the fandoms, as long as they're coming in as their own characters with their own backstory, and like as long as they're behaving in a way that they would behave, it's almost like we get a whole new thing.
Any two story characters that you want, like you're just blanket choice, who would you bring together?
I know I should have more of an answer since this was my idea to begin with, but this is this could be a trap.
It's a trap.
Well, going back to the roots, I think it'd be really cute to have like a Junie B. Jones, Charlotte Webb, like to have her, with Wilbur and just the way that. Or like Amelia Bedelia and Junie B. Jones.
Oh my God.
You've got the super literal and like cute adventure and I think those kinds of things, Captain Underpants and Junie B. Jones, like where you get, or Captain Underpants and Amelia Bedelia, that would be, I feel like, kind of funny to their own thing. But yeah, I don't know, it's starting to go from that way, because if you're going into the real fandoms, like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, I don't think would actually mesh well. But you could do like Lord of the Rings and the Maximum Rides, right? Where maybe they, can come in because you've already got eagles, so it's like, instead of orcs, we've got, or again, Maximum Ride and Harry Potter would be pretty easy because you already have character, like that's not that far of a twist, but then you get, again, more of that science that's brought in as opposed to the magic, which then you get maybe muggles come, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, you could start to kind of play with stuff. But I think I would leave the big core ones alone, like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, the Court of Thrones. I've not read it, but I've heard a lot. Bridgerton, like I would leave them. Bridgerton's one that I did reverse. So the Maze Runner is one that I reversed. I saw first, and then I was like, I want to read that.
Me too. I did that too.
Bridgerton, I saw first.
All the Bridgerton books recently, and they're the heaving bosom covers, like before they got like updated, so they're all the bodice ripper covers. I'm just like, I don't care, I'm gonna read them anyway. But yeah, I watched Bridgerton, and I wanted to go back and read the book. So.
Yep, and then the Maze Runner, and Ready Player One.
I will say that Ready Player One is the one exception that I have to. Well, two. I've got two exceptions to the movie being better than the book. So if you've read Ready Player One, there's no way that anybody wants to sit there and watch somebody play a game on a system for 3 hours. So of course they had to make like some major plot changes to make it interesting in a movie. And so I watched the movie first, but I went back and watched and read the book, and I thought, okay, that I can see why they would make those changes. You'd have to. There's no way certain scenes would work in a movie. There's just not, And then I was thinking earlier when you said Beauty and the Beast. So have you ever seen the adaptation of Beauty and the Beast that it was Beastly, and it has Alex Pettifor and Neil Patrick Harris and it's got, who's the girl from High School Musical that plays Zac Efron's girlfriend?
Vanessa Hudgens.
Yes. And it's an updated modern version, and it's a book, and the guy's written a whole series of books, all the fairy tales, but like just twist them a little. And the reason that Beastly is so cool, because what they do to Alex Pettifor is they have like metal and tattoos and piercings and these beautifully elaborate, detailed scars and stuff. And so instead of like a rose in a glass, they have this massive tree tattooed on his back that you can actually actively see the leaves falling off in certain. So I read the book and I really enjoyed it. And then I watched the movie and I was like, that was a much better version of a book to a movie because of the visuals.
Yeah. For me, my two favorite book to movies, because of how accurate, well, three, I guess. So the one is the newer, which is not new anymore, but the newest version of the Lemony Snicket series of unfortunate events with Neil Patrick Harris. Like the fact that they opened it with the actual dialogue, like the actual little preface in the chapters. And again, they ended up going off just a little, but it was so accurate. I was like, I love this. Then the other one is the first Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
What? Oh,
the first, like the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Not the other ones, but that one from the C.S. Lewis. Like I really felt like that one was super on. And you just got it visually.
I wish that they would go. I wish that somebody would take all seven books, I think, are in the series. Because there's the Magician's Nephew, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and I don't know what order they're in, but there's yeah. So however many there. I wish somebody would actually do the books in order as like a season and do all like 7 seasons or whatever as a series. And do them in order, because The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe has been done several times, and I love it every single time. But what about The Magician's Nephew and The Silver Chair and The Boy and His Horse and I can't remember the title. But, there's the ones that are not, they always do the Dawn Treader. Yeah, they always do and I'm just like, no, do all the books because they're really interesting as one story. If you start from the very beginning and go to the very end, it's all one thing.
Yeah. The other one that for me was really pretty accurate was the newest Lightning Thief. Percy Jackson, Lightning Thief. The newest first season was really pretty accurate, which I appreciated.
I know my daughter read them, and I'm getting ready to start reading those as a piggyback off of her. But we watched the series, and I remember watching the movie going, oh, okay, I like this movie, but everybody else hated it. And then the series came out, and it was like, no, okay, this is done much better. So I could just tell that the story was much better, and I'm really curious as to what they're going to do with season 2. I'm really into it.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I love right. So the Percy Jacksons and that's my Jimmy Jam too, because they're just so easy to read.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, is there a book? So, like, I've reread To Kill a Mockingbird probably 15 times throughout my life. And each time I get something new out of it because I'm a different age when I've read it, or I'm a different place in my life when I've read it. Do you have a book like that for you that you've read it multiple times and it hits you different every time?
For me, because there are, right, like you said, I can never read all the books that exist. I'm very big on a new book. So the Harry Potters are the ones that I have read the most. I have read them all like over 16 times, like individually, totaling over 16. But otherwise, I really like to read new series and things. I think there's one, it's a personal development book, but it's called The Values Factor by Dr. John D. Martini. And That one is like a workbook kind of, but it's about your own values, and because they change as you change and
Oh,
grow in
absolutely.
things, I get new stuff out of the book every time. So that is one, the only other one I would say that I've really reread a lot.
Yeah. I really love how in the last 10 years, the genres that are more popular now, there's more light to them. Like, so I've got sections in my bookstore, African American sections, Hispanic sections. I've got an LGBTQ section, and those sections get bought out so fast every single time. And I'm so happy because there's so many good books in those genres that I think before haven't gotten any light. And we recently read the A Master of Jinn, and it takes place in India, and it's a sapphic book about two female detectives, and one of the female detectives has an affair with another female genie, and that kind of stuff. And I love all the different cultural books. Do you have any books in your that you like that are of a different culture that you would recommend?
I think for me, I've always gone off of reference, or not reference, but referral from people, or like the libraries when I used to live on base, they would know me, and so they would just kind of almost trade me. Like I'd come in with my books and they would
Sure.
just hand me other ones that they think I would like. So I've never really shopped based off of a specific genre outside of, is it fiction, young adult or fantasy. And so
Right.
really looking at the culture within the books, like the Aragon, books where it was in a different time and space. But I've not specifically and intentionally gone for only like women authors or of color
Yeah.
or anything like that. They just come from the book. So I don't even know really where they land. I'm just like, I like this.
Yeah. I started a project for my own self that I wanted to read books from different cultures and different genres that I hadn't read before. And so, like, we did Flamer, How to Be Gay, and Genderqueer when Rutherford County here tried to ban them, which some of the best books I've ever read. And I wanted to read A Master of Gin, and then we are going to read Tony Adeyemi's series. She just released the third book, and when I tell you, I squealed when I saw it and had my friend, give me a copy right now and bring it to me. And I've actually met her, and she's incredible. And she is kind of what gave me the idea to do that, because she talked about being Black and having to read books that have certain words in there, and teachers telling them, yes, this word's awful, but we have to read it, so just deal with it. And so I had been thinking about that this year, and I was like, I want to read books from different cultures and different genres and different subject matters that I normally wouldn't choose to read, because I want to be exposed to different things. And I think that the fiction genre has gotten so much more valuable in bookstores because you have so many different things now and so many different topics. And I love that about books, that they do that and they let everybody say, oh yeah, that's me. Okay.
Yeah, I think that is something that I also really like about books, is that there's so many gender neutral or racial neutral, like the unspecified, where they just are talking. And so maybe they specify, pronouns, but then past that, they really don't say. And so you get to put them in whatever imagery comes up for you. And then of course, when
Right.
it turns into a movie or a TV show, then you get it visually. But there's a lot of things that are like, and I don't even notice that it isn't specified, because since I have the movie in my head, I'm going to make up what they look like anyway. But I think that that's a
Exactly.
really cool thing with books, is that you can multiple people can read it from different cultures and see their movie plays different.
Oh, absolutely. And I love when writers give you just enough to feed your imagination. Like Stephen King does that with his horror books, and that some of the stuff he doesn't describe. He gets your mouth watering for something and then keeps going. And so your brain this whole time is conjuring up all this awful stuff. That, and I love when writers do that and give your brain enough to, okay, so we're in a haunted house. And then your brain conjures up a haunted house, and then your brain conjures up a haunted house, but it's not the same haunted house. And I really love that books have been able to do that, especially just the young adult genre lately is, I think, just exploded.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's really a cool place where I think what I mentioned before about creating without having to create, it feels like I'm creating when I'm reading because all of this imagery and the dynamic and the backstory, past the backstory that's given. I think that also potentially as an actor, where I'm practiced in when I read a character, when I read a breakdown, to start creating a story about this character and where they've come from and what they've done and on the tie to that person. And so I think it allows me to as well, anything that isn't stated, I just fill it in for me as I read, which again can get in trouble once it turns into a film or a movie.
Sure.
But otherwise, like Hermione's name being Hermione, and people were like, "Oh, I thought it was Hermione." My mom called her Hermione for every time she read it, and she was Hermione when I read it. But just like little things like that, where the pronunciation of, although I'll just say this, and then we can go back. But the Avatar: The Last Airbender, his name is Aang. There's a whole series about his name being Aang, and then they did that movie and they called him Ong, and it was like, why? One job. You had one job. Anyway.
Yeah, I watched the movie, and my daughter and I watched all of the whole TV series, right? And then, she wanted to watch like the cartoon series. Okay, we watched cartoon series. And then, we'd said, oh yeah, well, that there's this movie. And she said, what? And so we started watching, and it was just, no, the look on her face.
The new one, that's another one that did a really good job.
Yes, they really did. I thought so as well. I thought it was just right on. Have you done a movie that was based on a book that like you had the character in your head and then you're doing it and then someone goes, but that's not what they look like, or what have you? Have you gotten any kind of setup like that?
I have not. All of my movies and voiceovers and things were all originally written. And so the movie Instant Karma that's on Amazon Prime, the most recent one that I did during COVID, well, we filmed it during COVID. It didn't get released till 2022, but that one was actually written for me. And
nice.
Well, the role, not the whole movie, but the role was written with me in mind, I should say, because they still had to audition and things.
I'm going to write that down because I don't have that one.
Instant Karma. Yeah. And so that role was written with me in mind, but it was also, which I guess was kind of interesting with what you're talking about, because there was an assumption and a character that he had in his mind when he was making her, which was based off of me, or off of what he would think either that I would do or not. And then, so when I still had to audition. So luckily I play myself better than 30 other me's. And so after I got it, he was like, he told me that after I got cast, he told me that he wrote it with me in mind. And so I also then got a lot of leeway, because it was like, well, how would you do this? Or I would take the lines that were written and the way that I would say them or do things, because she could have been a very unlikable character. And so I tried to really give her life through what I had. Otherwise, the other ones that I've done, I don't always try to work myself into the character, because that's not what I'm here to play, whatever character is given to me. But on that one, an Instant Karma was a big one. But then a horror that I did, it's not out yet, but that I filmed, was really the opposite. It was like, this is what the character is. This is what the character's doing. This is what, like, not you. Come in.
God, do you prefer horror movies or like your genre? Which one do you prefer more to make?
I definitely do not prefer horror movies. I actually, on that the writer and director contacted me on social media and was like, "Hey,
Oh,
saw your
really?
stuff. I
Okay.
want you to star in my movie." And I said, "Thank you, no, thank you." Like, because I don't watch horror movies. I'm very easily scared. I got a lot of trauma response. I was like, "No, thank you." I'm more of a, it's funny because all my headshots and things are in my reels very drama, but then as a
Mhm.
person, I'm very comedy. And so I
Yeah.
like to say I'm kind of the female Dwayne Johnson. So it's like I'm actiony but I'm the comedic relief at the same time.
Love
And
it.
so I did. So I said no. Well, then he contacts my agent and pitches to her. So I get a call from my agent, like, "Hey, we've got this thing for you and we think you should do it." I was like, gosh, and it was the same horror movie. And so I said, okay, because filming it is very different than watching it.
Oh, I'm
So there's
sure.
no music. Like the jump scares are planned. They have to do the same shot. They have the same scene from multiple shots. You also watch the bad guy come in as just Jerry from down the road with his niceties, and then he gets transformed into this villain. Right? Like it's just so different. And they hit cut, and they're like they go from their big scary gravelly voice to like, "Hey, you good? Like let me help you up." Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
So it was very different to do, and I would do another one. I had an audition just the other day for a thriller, technically not a horror, but for a thriller. But my preference is I would love to do kind of like the books that I read, like a fantasy magic, like a magic, or like Maximum Ride, like science, sci-fi is fine, but like flying, like
Mhm.
I would love to do, superhero is fine, Marvel, like just
I could see you
outside,
doing that.
pushing reality a little.
I could see you doing a superhero movie. I could absolutely see that, like, without a doubt. Did you ever watch the Kevin Costner movie? Oh gosh, it's called Mr. Brooks. There is a
No.
scene. It's done as a thriller, and Kevin Costner's always said that he would never play a serial killer or a bad guy or anything like this, but he does in this movie. And there's a scene where it's him and I believe it's William Hurt, and they're sitting in the car, and you can tell that this was very strategically done, and that they both turn around and look out the back window at the exact same time with the exact same facial expressions on there, and it is the creepiest thing I have ever seen in my life, and literally just ooh, every time I see it, even when I know it's coming. And so when you film like horror movies and that kind of stuff, how do you get in that mental headspace? Because you know what's going to happen is going to freak someone out. So how do you get in the mental headspace to film that so that it comes across on film as someone sitting in the audience going, "Oh my God."
Yeah, so part of the coaching that I do is with my actors and models. And I mean, I've not technically done an author, but I think it could be the same thing. Anyone that wants to get into a state and then also get themselves out of it, because that's
Right.
the trick. Because Lady Gaga, right, said that she got stuck in her Gucci state, and that'll happen a lot with people that aren't necessarily trained to go in and out. So for me personally, I, with my kind of subconscious training, trigger a little bit of a trauma response so that I really am scared or really am feeling whatever it is, so that it can come across naturally, and then I've got breaks that will help me get back out. But those drama, it's more important for in between shots that I don't break then, just because then working myself back up just takes so much energy. So for energy management purposes, I just communicate with my team, with my cast and crew, that because I am usually when I cut, I can pop in and out of the comedy and drama very quickly. I can come in mad. Like everything is honestly good except being scared. That one I like really need some internal prep for, because that's a place that obviously my body doesn't want to go into. And
Sure.
so from my usual pop back and forth, it's just the communication with the cast and crew that I'm going to need to get into my little space now, which also is wonderful because they're very, at least in my experience, the times that I've had to do it, because I did the horror movie, but then there's also an instant karma, some moments where I just really needed to get into a space. And so we film and they call cut and I just keep it and I just keep and maintain until the next shot, until we're actually done with that scene. And then I can wipe and break and move on. But it's less so. I honestly, even whenever I'm performing, I think less of who is going to watch it and more so of the vision that the director and writer is trying to cast. That's really what I love the most about performing as a singer, actor, model, dancer, any of my avenues. My goal and what brings me the joy is to see somebody that has something in their head, right? Has a story that they want to be told. And then all of a sudden to watch their face as they watch it happen in real life is like my favorite thing, because it comes from inside their head to outside via me as the vehicle. Yeah. And it's like, I love that. And as long as they're happy, because you're right, there's all kinds of reviews of all kinds of things and there's all kinds of opinions. And as long as they're happy with their casting decision and that they want that they've gotten what they wanted out of it, I try not to think about what other people think of what I do, because there's just no way to live in an overwhelm of yes.
I kind of feel that way when I'm putting together something for one of my authors in my bookshop. They're happy. Some of them are just happy if they sell anything, whereas I love them so much and I want them to just like sell out and everybody to buy their book and love their book so much. And I always take it personally when like it's not a grand slam sellout, and all of them are like, no, it's fine. I'm like, no, I want you to be a famous author because your book is so good. And so I get what you mean about I want that person to be happy. That's all I really care about, is if you're happy, I'm happy. But, just that wanting to just take something and make it what that person wants. I love that's kind of how you view that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's when you're in this kind of field too, it's about what you can control. And really at the end of the day, the only thing I can do is give them that. And as far as distribution, if people like it, if tickets sell out, like if, whatever, if it hits number one, that's not really, that's off of my plate now. And so being able to separate from that and just come in and do my job to the best of my ability, like that's my gift, allows that to really fall away from my nervous system so that I'm not checking too often, because it can, because of course I want the story to be told. And I think it's fun. I think they're good. Well, it depends on what it is. Obviously the horror movie isn't fun. I mean, it was fun to do, but especially if it's got a good
horror movies are fun. I really do. I think horror movies are fun. And I necessarily tend to like more thrillers than like stabby bad guy who you killed 10 times and is still, give me the Hannibal Lecters and the scary thriller guy that could actually happen. That freaks me out more than, Jason or
you. I guess question for you, turning it back around. Do you prefer thriller, horror to watch or to read? What's scarier?
I prefer to watch them, because for me reading it, it's just, I will say the only book that has absolutely just freaked me out. Movies always make me jump, and even I know it's coming, and so I love that scared jump thing. But horror books I don't really get scared at books, because I'm like, it's a book I'm reading. I'm super into it, but it doesn't freak me out that much. But I will say, Salem's Lot by Stephen King, I've read it probably 5 times, and each time it gives me the heebie-jeebies so bad that there are a couple parts that I have to okay, we have to go watch cartoons now, because there is no way in hell I'm going to sleep at all, at all. And it is a tribute to Stephen King in that he gives you just enough to just get your brain and your imagination working. And then my imagination just goes, and I can't sleep because and when they did the movie of Salem's Lot, I think it was the 60s or 70s, they did the same thing where it wasn't gruesome, it wasn't bloody, it wasn't gory, it was just creepy. And it was just creepy enough to give you the, when you're watching it. But I would say that's the only book that's ever made me just, nope, we're done reading for the evening, that's going to go right over there and think about what it's done. And I'm going to go watch, cartoons so I can get my brain to calm back down, But no, I prefer watching. And I like a good jump scare. Even if I know it's coming, I like a really good jump scare. But slasher movies are not my favorite. I like thrillers where that could have actually happened. That's more terrifying.
Totally. And it's so interesting because I've always enjoyed the concept. That sounds bad. I don't enjoy the concept of psychological, like Hannibal and things. I don't condone it. I can handle the story. It's just, but sure. I can't, again, the watching it's too much. So like the story of Hannibal, and like, I think it's interesting. Or the Saw movies, and like,
I can't watch those.
The idea of, like playing the game and I can talk through the concept and be good with that and be like, oh, that's interesting. But yeah, watching or reading, like I never read Goosebumps as a kid because I thought that they would be scary. And so like just the idea of them being too scary, I didn't like the Dementors and Harry Potter, like to watch them. The orcs and Lord of the Rings, like I had a very, very low fear tolerance as a child and growing up. And so I just stayed far away from anything that could even be remotely a little bit scary. And so I was laughing because I actually filmed the horror film after I filmed Instant Karma, but Instant Karma hadn't come out yet. And I was joking with my mom and I was like, watch this be the one that releases first. And I was like, and none of my family watches horror. I was like, watch this be the one that releases first. And my mom was like, I'll go see it twice just for you. And I was like, thanks, Mom.
Oh, I think that's interesting that you say Saw, because I think there's thrillers, there's horror movies, and then there's and I hate this phrase, but it's called torture porn. And that's where all those Saw movies, the Hostel, all those movies where it's horror, but it's gruesome and it's just bloody and just violent and just gruesome just for the point of being gruesome and gross. I hate those movies. I think it's just tacky and it's not scary. It's like a bad version of a horror movie, if that makes sense. Like you're taking all the fun out of being scared by showing me the most gruesome thing you can possibly come up with. I don't want that. I don't like those.
Yeah. The grossest thing that I've been filming around is somebody throwing up, again, in the movie, was the only thing that happened during a movie called, oh my gosh, Some Nudity Required. That's what it's called. Some Nudity Required. And one of the girls gets drunk and then has to throw up. And so, I work crew as well. So I perform on the front end, but then I also crew on the back end, and I was crewing for this film and helping with camera. So it's like, and it was, it's interesting that you got like this big pane of glass and the cameras, and of course it has to be really, really cleaned to make sure that the camera can look right through it. And then we're on the other side of it. And, the special effects gives her like the oatmeal and whatever it is that she's got. And then she turns around and right into the glass in front of the camera, which is, and it's like, I think those things are interesting because it's not real, right? Like you watch it happen, you watch the prep happen, you get the call for it. But I don't know. I feel like the extra gruesome stuff, I mean, besides how on the special effects end it happens, I just think it would be even more like, I don't know, ridiculous to film it because all you're doing is these like,
oh yeah, for sure,
gruesome moments, and there's not like plot, there's no acting to that. Like it's the Bloods moment,
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, Samantha, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, but we are almost out of time. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day today to talk to me. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope all of our listeners go and watch all of your movies because you're just lovely and delightful. So thank you so much.
Maybe we can start a famous book club.
Oh, stop playing. I'll do it. Don't tempt me. Thank you guys all for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Spine Bookcast, Chronicles of a Bookshop. And as always, happy reading.